what was expected was that this interim administration, as it is an unelected administration, it would actually preside over just the election process and then would pave the way for the next elected government. Instead of that, this government started this whole process of quote-unquote reforms. Army Chief General Waker-Uz-Zaman reportedly had requested the student advisors to agree to a new political party, that is New Army League. The student advisors who participated in the meeting with General Zaman put out social media posts accusing the army chief of being the remnant of the fascist regime.
Fighting an election is a slog. It's just a matter of organization so much at the end of the day, in which if the Army League were allowed to contest, I'm sure it'll get at least 20% of the votes, which would not even be matched by the student leaders right at this moment.
At the level of, say the interim government, India is in a way the villain to the interim government.
Hi, I'm Shoaib Daniyal. I'm going to be joined by author and journalist Kallol Bhattacherjee to discuss the rather chaotic situation in Bangladesh right now, almost a year after the July revolution which deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Kallol, welcome to Scroll.
Thank you so much, Shoaib.
So around a couple of years back, the leader of the interim government, Mohammed Yunus, threatened to resign. A bit of an anticlimax after the heightened emotions after the revolution. Could you unpack what led to him giving this threat?
Well, tension had been building between the Bangladesh military and the interim administration led by Professor Mohammed Yunus over the last 6 to 7 months. It started with a detailed interview that the army chief, General Waker-Uz-Zaman, had given to Pratham, one of the leading newspapers of Bangladesh. And after that interview, there were several other developments and also comments, several of them, those were delivered behind the closed doors. And especially that came last week, in which the army chief delivered a closed door meeting. I mean, he held a closed door meeting with the commanding officers of the Bangladesh Army. And the notification for the meeting actually said that the commanding officers should attend the meeting in their combat dresses. And during the meeting, the army chief said that he was not being informed by the interim government on several of the crucial decisions that the interim government had taken so far. And then he went on to describe one of the most important initiatives of the interim government, namely the so-called humanitarian corridor that is being planned to connect the Rakhine province of Myanmar with the Chittagong division of southeast Bangladesh. Now, that is a highly controversial project because Rakhine is known to be totally volatile. It's prone to drugs and weapons smuggling. It is also the home base of several insurgent, outfits like the Arakan Army and the Kuki National Front, etc. And there is a great deal of unease within the security establishment of Bangladesh about going ahead with this project. Despite that, the interim government has shown willingness to go ahead with this particular initiative. And it discussed that initiative with Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, when he visited Bangladesh recently.
It seems like what's happening, Kallol, is after Hasina was deposed, Yunus was put up almost like a figurehead. The real power behind the throne obviously was the army, right? But it seems slowly, Dr. Yunus is actually trying to take real power. He's even backed a new students' party.
Well, the military was the outfit that held Bangladesh for nearly 72 to hours or so. The first 3-4 days after the very chaotic departure of Prime Minister Hasina. And you may remember that there was a great deal of confusion in those moments. And it was General Waker-Uz-Zaman who held the first press conference in which he announced that an interim administration was to be set up, and there was some doubt about who was going to lead that interim administration, because some section believed that the army chief was actually the best person to lead that interim administration. But then the army chief himself said that some notable figure from the civil society would take over. And it was in that context that, as Muhammad Yunus often likes to remind people, to the world, that the students reached out to him when he was in Paris at that time, and he therefore thereafter he flew back to Dhaka and took charge of the top post of the Bangladesh government. But what happened subsequently was that here was the initial confusion, and the chaos was handled and somehow cleared up by the military. But then came the period that was being dominated by the advisors, the student activists, and in some ways, this day-to-day movement walas of Dhaka, led by the students, the Islamists, etc., who have tried to lead the interim government towards a certain direction. And that is what we find, that slowly, gradually, over the last 9 months or so, we find that the military and the interim administration has really moved away from each other.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And one of the main flashpoints, it seems, is when elections are going to be held, right? Dr. Yunus wants
Absolutely.
elections to be delayed further and further, and it seems like the army is now veering around to a position where elections should be held sooner rather than later. Could you unpack why the timing of this election has become so critical, such a big political football in Bangladesh?
So, what was expected was that this interim administration, as it is an unelected administration, it would actually preside over just the election process and then would
Hmm.
pave the way for the next elected government. And that was an unwritten agreement, it was an unwritten understanding. And it was felt that this government would stay only as long as it is necessary to hold an election, because what is necessary is to hold a credible election that would help people to forget that there was a controversial and non-transparent election held in the month of January 2024. Instead of that, this government, the interim administration, has, soon after coming, it had started this whole process of quote unquote reforms. Now, reforms
Hmm.
that are extremely elaborate and structural in nature and has no clear timeline. That sometimes these political and electoral and financial reforms that are being discussed may take not just years, but even perhaps decades of
In fact,
activity.
just
So
to give our viewers the scale of the reform that sometimes is being talked about, I think there are elements now within Bangladesh who talk of this being a new rebirth after 71, right? That's the
yeah,
scale of
yes,
reform. Almost experts writing a new constitution has also been discussed, right?
yes, and actually, a lot of people in Bangladesh don't believe in rebirth. One of the
Hmm.
BNP leaders was telling me recently that in Bangladesh, we don't believe in these concepts of rebirth, and a country can't be born multiple times. Bangladesh was born in 1971, and that is the only birth that we believe in. But these people who are currently in power, they obviously believe in that sort of symbolic language. So there is obviously a gulf of between these two understandings, because there is obviously one school which believes in the tradition and the activities of 1971, and that's in fact found in both the leading political formations, that's Army League as well as the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. But these new outfits like the National Citizens Party, the NCP, which was recently launched by the followers of Professor Muhammad Yunus and the student advisors. These parties believe in that language, that the country was reborn in 2024, and therefore there will be a new charter. And we are also expecting that these student activists would go ahead and bring out some sort of a July proclamation this coming July, which would try to give some sort of a constitutional status to some of the main demands of the student movement of July August 2024. These are also highly controversial steps that are not being liked by the leading political formations that trace their lineage back to 1971, and I'm referring to both Army League and Bangladesh Nationalist Party in this context.
So the party that you referred to is basically the party set up by the student leaders of the July movement, right? Uh,
Exactly.
explain to us the political wheeling dealing that's going on. Is this actually just a way for the students to buy time to set up some sort of political apparatus? Because right now it seems they have no political apparatus.
Absolutely, because apart from the fact that this political outfit that has come very recently, that is the NCP, National Citizens Party, the other
Mhm.
two main political formations, that is Army League and Bangladesh Nationalist Party, have very long association and very long familiarity with the bureaucratic apparatus of Bangladesh. But it's really doubtful that they would do well, even if more time is given to them, because
Mm.
Bangladesh has many other political parties, and some of the political parties in Bangladesh, like the Communist Party of Bangladesh and JSD, the very famous Socialist Party, which used to be very violent in the 1970s, as it is known as Jashod. These political parties are parties in name, but they are more of movements. These are public movements. So, my understanding is that NCP is also destined to be a public movement in the near future, but it is not really going to make a big impact on the electoral platform. In fact, the big impact on the political electoral platform will be made by Army League, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, and of course Jamaat, because these are the three political outfits in the parties that will make big impact. And the longer this chaos continues, the brighter becomes the prospect for Army League, because Army League has a vast network of supporters and cadre in the country. And though the interim government has quote unquote paused the political activities of Army League, it has not banned Army League, so to say, and that is a very important distinction, and that allows the party to continue its cadre-based activities at home, behind closed doors. And recently, they even came out with a big rally in which dozens of people were arrested.
Is there a -1 formula that the Awami is thinking of in Bangladesh to disown Sheikh Hasina and then to function as a legitimate political party within Bangladesh?
In fact, that was one of the starting point of the crisis, because the military, as it was reported some couple of months ago, held a closed door meeting with some of the student advisors, in which the
Mhm.
army chief, General Waker-Uz-Zaman, reportedly had requested the student advisors to agree to a new political party, that is, new Army League, under the leadership of the former speaker, Shireen Sharmin Ahmed. Um, and it was he who suggested that this Army League, as a political party in the country, is necessary, and therefore it would be wiser for everyone to reconcile to the fact that whether they like it or not, the Army League is going to be a part of the political process in the country. And the student advisors who participated in the meeting with General Zaman actually went out and then tweeted and put out Facebook posts and put out social media posts accusing the army chief of being, as they usually say, the remnant of the fascist regime. And that triggered the confrontation between, Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus and the army chief in a more visible manner, because these student advisors, Hasnat Abdullah, most importantly, he and his cohorts are known to be great admirers of Professor Yunus, and Professor Yunus also speaks very, very highly about them. And it became a very bitter quarrel on social media and between the officials, which indicated that these student advisors, who are very close to Professor Muhammad Yunus, were basically working in coordination with him, and the army chief thereafter became even more, even a bigger critic of Muhammad Yunus and the interim government.
I want to zoom out from the politics of the interim government to a larger social question around the right wing tilt in Bangladesh. So, a couple of, I think this morning only, we had Azharul Islam, a Jamaat leader accused of war crimes in
Mm.
1971, being released from prison. The student leaders that you speak of, it seems, also have right wing Islamist leanings, like from their writings and Facebook posts. It seems that they are more right than left or center. Uh, what is the situation right now, 9 months on, with respect to the right wing in Bangladesh? The Islamist strain in Bangladesh, which which has always existed, but maybe has never enjoyed the prominence that it has till now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the Islamists have existed in Bangladesh, but Bangladesh has always had its own kind of Islamists. I mean, if you look at the
Mm,
heritage of Maulana Bhashani, even Maulana
mm.
Bhashani was also an Islamist, and yet he was one of the founders of Army League in 1949. And then Bhashani joined the Bangladesh Formation movement with Sheikh Mujib. And let us also not forget that Maulana Bhashani was
In
also
fact, he's a rare creature that can only exist in that era. He was a socialist
yes.
Islamist, right? Lal Maulana.
Yes,
So,
Lal Mangal. And also
right,
he was also close to, as what at one point, Jawaharlal Nehru. So
right.
Bangladesh's Islamist traditions are also very unique and peculiar to Bangladesh. But what
Hmm.
we are witnessing right now is there are multiple strains of Islamism. Of course, we have the Jamaat, and then we have the Hifazat and other such outfits. And recently, of course, we have seen outfits like Hezbollah Tahrir that are pan-Islamist in nature and have external support system backing them. So these, apart from the traditional Islamists, so we are now finding these new varieties of Islamists who are also, on the surface of Bangladesh
And
politics.
how
But
are how are minorities feeling now, Kallol? So there was a lot of feeling of unsafety as well as attacks just after the uprising. Are things better now, or is it the same as it was 9 months back?
well, the main issue of Bangladesh, I mean, as we all know about the problem of minorities, but the issue is really the breakdown in law and order. And that breakdown in
Hmm.
law and order is part of the breakdown of the bureaucracy and the contested nature of bureaucracy and the interim government. There is the total breakdown in the relationship because the interim government and its chief supporters, namely the student activists or the people protesters, as they're known as, the student people, they continue to view the police and the security administration, as I was saying earlier, as their opponents and their as allies of the previous regime who need to be countered. So you asked about the minority issue, and I have been talking about it myself. That the real problem in Bangladesh is actually the killing of the majoritarian population or majoritarian political groups targeting the majority community first, and that is the first line of victims are essentially fellow Muslims. And then,
Hmm.
of course, others are also in the firing line because it is a political contest. And as Muhammad Yunus quite unfortunately keeps on referring, that the victims of violence from the minority community are not really victims of targeted minority persecution, but they are targeted because of political reason. So for whatever it's an X or Y reason, both the minority as well as the majority communities members are being targeted in this condition because the law and order machinery is not really doing well in Bangladesh right now.
I want to jump back into party politics. Couple of days back, Sheikh Hasina put out a Facebook post mentioning St. Martin's Island, the supposed island that she'd alleged that the US wanted and had sort of blamed the July Revolution on in some ways. Uh, what is the US's role right now in Bangladesh? So just after Hasina had got deposed, they seemed to back Dr. Yunus quite forcefully. Is that still happening?
Well, let us not forget that United States was one of the major partner countries of Bangladesh even during the Sheikh Hasina period, and United States traditionally
Hmm.
has been the largest investor in Bangladesh, and therefore its political footprint or political presence in Bangladesh has not been commensurate with its economic profile in the Bangladeshi economy. But after the
Hmm.
departure of the Sheikh Hasina government, perhaps now we are finding that the political profile of the United States within Bangladesh has also gone up many times in an unprecedented manner, perhaps since the days of General Irshad, who was backed by the Americans in the 1980s. This is
Hmm.
the first time that we are finding the United States. not only showing its military presence and also its diplomatic presence, but showing its military presence in very, very critical areas. Like just 3 days back, they held what is just being described as a fire drill, which is kind of an HADR, that's humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation in the shores of Cox's Bazar. And it was
Mm-hmm.
quite unprecedented for someone like me who have been following the country for a considerable number of years. That this is really happening, because Sheikh Hasina very famously used to oppose exactly these sort of activities, but here was the United States and its army and air force, uh, you know, carrying out these exercises on the soil of Bangladesh. So this is, and of course, there are also reports that military personnel from the United States are being seen to be moving around in places like Sylhet and Comilla and Brahmanbaria, very close to the Indian borders of Shillong, I mean, of Meghalaya, as well as Tripura and Assam. So you see that I think they're saying both diplomatic activities between the two outfits, that is the interim government of Bangladesh and the government of the United States, the bureaucracy of the United States, as well as the military activities, at least from the American side, these are becoming increasingly visible.
And it's just not the US, right? It seems China is making moves in Bangladesh too. A couple of days back, there were reports that it's trying to help Bangladesh set up an air base close to the Siliguri Chicken's Neck.
You're talking about the Lal Monirhat Air Base.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the airbase in Lal Monirhat is actually not new. It is an old airbase. It goes back to the
Mhm.
Second World War. And as we all remember, that during the Second World War, entire eastern part of India was in a way redesigned in terms of the military requirement of the Allied forces. And from Orissa to Bengal to East Bengal to Assam, there were several air bases that were created to help the war efforts during the early 1940s. And Lal Monirhat was also developed in that period. But over the last 70 years or so, and especially after the formation of Bangladesh in 1971, the importance of that airbase
Mhm.
had gone down, because as long as Pakistan, or rather Bangladesh, was East Pakistan till 1971, December 16, the airbase was of some strategic value for the Pakistan government of that time, but it basically was lost in that strategic calculation of the last 50 years or so. But now it is being devised. But the Bangladesh military was quite categorical in this remarkable press conference that they held day before yesterday. Uh,
Mhm.
and in that press conference, they came out quite clearly with the fact that they are not quite comfortable with the idea of handing over of such a strategically important airbase to another country. And one of the spokespersons in that press conference, he actually said that they are they are developing the airbase. That airbase was being developed, but they have not yet taken a call about handing it over to China, or if
Right.
at all, it would be handed over to any country. So there is again a difference of opinion between the interim government and the Bangladesh military on this very important airbase of Lal Monirhat.
I want to come to India. So India lost uh, hugely because of Hasina's being kicked out. India, I think, lost almost all its influence within Bangladesh. Then you have elements like what you're flagging, Kallol, the fact that the US is inside Bangladesh, the fact that China is making moves. Where does India stand now? Has India clawed back to some extent in the last 9 months, or is the situation just as bad as it was for New Delhi in July?
Well, to begin with, I think the big mistake that was committed by India during especially the last 5 years of Sheikh Hasina's governance, was that India gradually forgot the fact that the spirit of 1971 is actually a contested spirit, because there are multiple claimants to that legacy and to that
Mhm.
heritage. But they do claim that heritage of 1971, and they come not only from one party, that is, they do not come only from Army League, they also come from Bangladesh Nationalist Party. And what we saw was that the Indian establishment, to me, it appeared that it really fell for the line that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina used to advance, that it was her party, it was her father who were the prime movers. Of course, the Sheikh Hasina's father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was the towering figure of 1971 struggle, but there were also many others. And let us not forget the great Tajuddin Ahmed, and let us also not forget the founder of PNP, Captain Ziaur Rahman, who actually rebelled from the Pakistan military. He defected from Pakistan military to great personal risk, and then gave leadership to the Mukti Bahini and mobilized the East Bengal people from the Pakistan military forces who were Bengalis from East Pakistan. And then he created his own outfit and became part of the liberation struggle. So the heritage of 1971 was not limited to just Army League and Sheikh Hasina's heritage alone. I mean, there were multiple strands to that heritage, and I think our side gradually forgot, and they started only believing in one party oriented version of the heritage of 1971. And I remember the conversation that I used to have before the fall of Sheikh Hasina was that there was great deal of discomfort about extending a hand of friendship, or even holding a brief conversation with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Yes, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party had made some serious mistakes in the early 2000, especially because it was during Begum Khaleda Zia's tenure after 2002 or 2001 that there was all these Ulfa elements and others were bathed out of Dhaka. But a lot of time had passed and things were different, and they were willing to talk about their past mistakes. I think that opportunity should have been grabbed, and I think India should have.
In fact, from what I
Uh,
understand, the BNP repeatedly reached out to India during the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Is that correct?
Yes, of course, and they also reached out. They traveled to India, but they were not hosted, prominently, and they were not shown a great deal of, they were not kind of. It's not a very high-profile visit or anything like that. But what happened at this time was that, just in December last, say in 2023 December, when we used to discuss the necessity for holding a more transparent and a credible government. A credible election in Bangladesh. The idea that India would give is that it is Bangladesh's business, that Bangladesh organize its election in the way that it wants to organize it. But we saw that the election ultimately that was held in January 2024 was absolutely fraudulent because the opposition, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, did not participate. And in the last 10 months, we have seen that the Indian High Commissioner has hosted the Bangladesh Nationalist Party leaders, not once, but on multiple occasions. And today, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's leaders are talking in the language that is basically very comforting for the Indian establishment, because today they are talking about
Right.
protection of the yes, exactly. So they are talking about protection of democracy. They are talking about holding election. They are talking about ensuring accountability, and also about the spirit of 1971. Because BNP makes it very clear, as I was telling you a few minutes ago, that Bangladesh was
Mhm.
born in 1971 and Bangladesh was not reborn in 2024. So it's quite obvious that that Bangladesh Nationalist Party is also a political formation which can be a partner of dialogue with India. Along, I mean, there are multiple parties who can be the stakeholders when it comes to India. So I think that mistake has now been corrected, because obviously with the Army League, with Sheikh Hasina being on the Indian soil, India has that leverage. But also with the BNP, India is also in a far more comfortable position. So I think some of the grounds that were lost have been regained in the last 10 months. But then at the
Mhm.
level of, say the interim government, India is in a way, if I can say so, is a villain to the interim government.
So it seems India will have to wait for elections for more ground to be regained. in which
Uh,
it seems like the BNP will come to power if things go according to the current situation, and then India will regain some of its ground that it had lost.
Well, of course, India would have to regain some of the ground, at least in terms of trade and connectivity. Many projects that were launched in the years from 2015 onwards, all these projects are in limbo. So we have to really see if these projects, including the cross-border trade, let us remember that Bangladesh is one of the top 10 trading partners of India, and only two of the overland trading partners in South Asia, along with Nepal. But let us also remember what has happened in the last 9 months. That overland trade has been seriously affected because India has closed all the land ports to the export of textile apparels from Bangladesh. So it is a big blow to Bangladesh's textile apparel exports to India, especially though it is not really a very big part of Bangladesh's textile export globally. But then it is, of course, a bilateral blow to the trade relations. So yes, I mean these things will have to be recovered, but most importantly, Bangladesh will have to be stabilized, and that can happen only if Bangladesh acquires an elected government which would have some sort of reconciliation with the domestic bureaucracy and the security establishment, so that the law and order situation in the country can really come back on track.
Indeed, and you mentioned trade, and if you look at the map, Bangladesh is one of the very very rare countries surrounded on all three sides by another country. So again, I think what we're seeing for the last 1 year, this India Bangladesh extreme hostility, is probably a blip. Things will go back to a more normal situation, maybe in the near to medium term. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us.
hopefully.
Sorry,
Thank you so
hopefully, yeah.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Kallol. This was excellent. This was a great unpacking of the very chaotic situation in Bangladesh, and things are so fast moving that we will be back soon to discuss our neighboring country. Thank you so much for watching Scroll. I'm Shoaib Daniyal.